Flipped Inclusion. Anthropocentric Ergonomic Model. Felice Corona, Annalisa Ianniello and Tonia De Giuseppe, University of Salerno, Italy.
The drying up of the concept of human community, as shared transcendence and intersubjective communion, typical of the mobile and disoriented postmodern society, is configured as the reflection of postmodern metaphysical individualism. The anthropology of the atomized individual, enveloped in logical aporias, operates in the principle of total and divine self-sufficiency. The uncritical adherence to pre-established dogmas translates into the inability to refute widespread symbolizations and to produce divergent universes, to the point of inhibiting new transformative solutions and producing acquiescent forms of discernment. The interhuman bond, which is embodied communicativeness, risks both depleting the dialogical value of a foundational altere and of inducing prejudicially nihilistic sense productions. The unveiling of the axiological value of the person, individual substance of a relational nature, allows us to glimpse the epicenter of a neo-anthropology of the community, which heals and reconfigures the cultural presuppositions of global capitalism, starting from the dialogic rehumanization between universes' values. It unfolds, in this sense, the trajectory of humanist anthropocentrism, tendentially ethical, so-called noble, which promotes an effective renewal aimed at reconfiguring pedagogical knowledge and educational practices, in the context of a design ergonomic inclusive existential. The experimental descriptive transformative research of the flipped inclusion model carried out at the University of Salerno, in line with the ergonomic anthropocentric conceptual paradigm, aims at the deconstruction and reconstruction of the person, the principle and outcome of each pedagogical reflection, in view of a generative and regenerative pro-social transformation of the quality of human relationships, of the connective tissue of the community. With an anthropocentric ergonomic approach, flipped inclusion, as an exploratory study, design, and experimentation of complex adaptive systems, aims at the transformative efficiency that is determined through the implementation of technological systems, applied in a processual perspective. The model tested proposes a dynamic, circular, generative, and maieutic work organization of relational communion, with computational logics. One of the aims is to promote processually, investing in social nature and in media educational peer communication, through the promotion of an anthropomedial empowerment, which transcends individualisms. The ergonomic educational interventions of flipped inclusion presuppose the involvement of people in the planning and control of their own activities. With the aim of achieving the set objectives, each intervention develops in a systemic perspective, in that knowledge of a work system is inextricably linked to the study of the interactions between the parts that constitute it. Retracing what the International Organization for Standardization reiterated regarding the principles of ergonomics as basic guidelines for the design of work systems, flipped inclusion follows a cooperative approach throughout the process of exploration, conception, design, and experimentation. It also invests in the didactic transposition of the theory of operant conditioning and of Goffman's frame analysis through the identification of stimulation anchors of the selective processes, declined in steps of 1. Key. 2. Frame. 3. Framing. 4. Framework. In this sense, the educational value of simple city teaching, rooted in levels of learning for decomposed problems, is reaffirmed. In flipped inclusion, the work process, structurally ordered and organized in a deconstructivist perspective, follows a procedurality of the interaction, considered in its sequence, times and spaces, between man, equipment, materials, and information present in a system, carefully thought out to give due importance to the human factor. Flipped inclusion combines the concept of inclusion in a micro-meso-eso and macro-systemic perspective and the value of the didactic educational logic of the flipped classroom. The flipped inclusion model is organized into 4 transformative macro phases. 1. Exploring. 2. Conceiving. 3. Designing. 4. Testing. which follow the 6 design phases of the ISO 6385. 1. Formulation of goals, requirement analysis. 2. Design concept. 3. Detailed design. 4. Realization, implementation, and validation. Analysis and allocation of functions and evaluation are configured as transversal to the process phases. The ergonomic phase of the formulation of goals, requirement analysis, corresponds to exploration phase, problem finding. Conceptual nodes, key, are collected, interpreted and problematized, which reflect misunderstood experiences, recessive feelings, new and unexpected thoughts, typical of the private space of the self. In making use of the intrinsic motivational momentum, deriving from the process of active involvement, flipped inclusion positively predisposes to learning, with a view to an authentic anthropocentric enhancement of resources, potential, and differences. The ergonomic pedagogical inductive methodology used in this phase is inquiry learning, a process based on the investigation of problems, critical group discussion and the search for new solutions in a constructivist perspective. The conceive phase of flipped inclusion follows the design concept of the ISO norm and is based on the conceptual circumscription of the macro-problematic areas previously identified and inspected. This is the phase of the problem setting and analysis frame, in which the keyword becomes a concept, with sequential chaining and reinforcements. Through the ergonomic discovery learning methodology, the student discovers the conceptual relationships of a given domain of knowledge, enhances the retention of information by virtue of its autonomous organization and transformation. The detailed design of the International Organization for Standardization is reiterated in the design phase of flipped inclusion, which represents the set of the keyword which has become the concept frame, to which is added the challenge problem on to which the resolving research is intended, framing. By specifying the interrelationships of the meanings investigated, the aim is to plan the actions necessary for the creative resolution of the problems analyzed, problem solving and creative thinking. In order to pursue inclusive equity, in the perspective of enhance the potential of contemporary anthropos, ergonomic anthropocentric mastery learning is adopted, through an individualized and diversified preparatory path of objectives ordered by increasing complexity. The realization, implementation, and validation ISO is present in the decision-taking phase of the testing of flipped inclusion, step that allows the shared, redefined and progressive resolution of explored, circumscribed, and problematized conceptual nodes, framework. Using the methodology of experimental learning, the systematic reflection of the lived experience unfolds in a recursive cyclicity, in which knowledge is configured as the product of a previous experience of which it is the result. In a continuous transaction of anthropocentric cognitive, ethical, and emotional insights, the acquired experience becomes cognitive heritage, in a dynamic process of identifying the purpose with the objective, no longer originated by a simple instinct, for the personal lived experience. The ergonomic anthropocentric phases of the analysis and allocation of functions and of the ISO evaluation, in the perspective of the flipped inclusion model, are configured as transversal to the process phases. In order to manage the complexity of the intervening variables in progress and to rebalance the processes through systematic and non-extemporaneous feedback, flipped inclusion makes a constant evaluation and self-evaluation check in the pre-monitoring, post-processing, carrying out of the micro-meso-eso and contextualized macro designs inclusive, with ergonomic evaluation form organized according to standard evaluation rubrics by role, objective, communicative/cognitive and social end, processual skills and knowledge/competences, and phases. The processes activated in research on the flipped inclusion model, in tracing the postmodern logic in an anthropological paradigmatic key, confirm the importance of an inclusive transformative didactic action. The significant prevalence of a positive trend of the data collected on 2,260 learners in the 2014/2019 research years, the result of the tabulation of qualitative and quantitative analyses organized with a view to promoting ergonomically CO-constructed anthropocentric processes, through an evaluation and self-assessment, of the knowledge and skills, of communicative, cognitive and metacognitive, social and processual skills. In fact, flipped inclusion, focusing on proactive anthropos, as the protagonist of the CO-built training event, aims at an educational reconstruction. Investment in the person, as an ontological synthesis of the ergonomic project in the hermeneutics of being, is the key element that must be educated to experiment with systemic inclusiveness, in a joint, exclusive, fusional, and inclusive union.